if I will put it specifically, we are very heavily accented, and many of them struggle to actually hear what we are saying. And so in terms of training the manpower to be relevant and fit for the work that is being done out there, then the way we speak actually matter. And I would also like to link that to giving the youth or our children that are growing up more opportunity, because they speak their language. Many of our children, they are born here. They can speak the kind of language they want to hear. They don't like you to shout, like Pastor Adegun said, like a normal Kiwi, like we say in New Zealand, that we call them Kiwi, like the Kiwi Polish we have in Nigeria. So it's from here. So the Kiwi is their native birds, and they refer to themselves as Kiwi. So they want you to not to shout when you are speaking. Otherwise, they will think you are fighting or you are yelling. They will say and those are some of the things we take pride in Africa. When you are preaching and you are screaming, they say, yes, the spirit is moving. Then, in fact, and also our music as well. When the music is too loud, we've had some people that come into our church sometimes and they complain that it's too loud. In fact, we had a program recently where a young man came into our church about 3 or 4 times while we are rehearsing for a musical concert, saying, I can't put my 11-year-old daughter to sleep at 8:30 in the night. And we are there banging the drums, we are praising God. God is coming down to dance with us. So all of these things are things we need to be very sensitive, take them seriously, because until we get that right, they will never come into our midst. And we think maybe they are sort of racist. It's actually our way of life that is sort of putting them away, because our cultural background is still very much entrenched from where we come from. Running a church in New Zealand as if you are running a church in Iyanoipaja is very different. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Pastor David Shola Oludoyin, please just listen to this conversation before I pass it on to my co-moderator, Pastor Bumi Ajagunna. Pastor Oludoyin, please, if you have an opportunity, say you are invited to the governing council meeting, and they say, oh, you attended the symposium, do you have a 1-minute recommendation, to the governing council as far as our foreign policy guidelines, what it should look like moving forward? What will you say in 1 minute to the governing council? Pastor Shola Oludoyin, please. Okay, if we can't, have him speak to that right away. I don't know if Pastor Fumio Bilano is there, and if you want to give a shot of that.
I will just say to the governing council that for us to reach the world like we are supposed to, we have to be all things to all men and change some of the things that we do in light of our current situation, in the sense that we have to totally retool. We have to reconsider our church planting priorities, and we must find a way of reaching our young people, bringing them together with us, so that we will be able to accomplish what needs to be done. We need to separate our doctrinal, the doctrinal issues from every other issue, whether, well, that takes us to the second part of the conversation. But that's because of the current situation we have to change the way we do some of our things to reflect the reality we now live in.
Thank you very much. Now over to you, Pastor Bumi Ajagunna.
Thank you very much for that, Pastor Badru, and thanks to all the panelists who have responded. I would also like to acknowledge all the chats that are going on our different platforms, very intuitive chats, and thank you so much for them all. Now I would appreciate the comments that have been made. We are hearing, different comments on we have to be intentional when it comes to planting churches in foreign lands, and the education, the training is extremely very key. And we cannot, overflog that issue where young adults who are mission-minded are allowed to study maybe for the few number of years before church planting takes place. Just that, core divine training that is necessary before they are thrown into the missions field. The idea is to get such people in the culture climb of the environment early enough, just like one of our panelists mentioned, that he was 19 when he actually started preaching. So, giving the young ones that opportunity to actually train and then go out into the mission fields, it sort of ties in as well. And with that said, I would like to now welcome our pastor from Kenya, Pastor Nwankwo Apollos, to give us a different perspective on this. Just 2 minutes, and afterwards, I'll call on Pastor Sheson Banjo to follow up with a response on that. Over to you, Pastor Nwankwo.
Thank you, Bumi, and great to see all of us on this platform. I think, first of all, we probably have not thought about strategy. I mean, I was listening to the others who were actually speaking. Excuse me, I think I. Can I? Apologies. I think.
For Pastor, can we get in, Pastor?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. It's just echoing a little. And once you have the opportunity to maybe remove one of the audios from your 2 systems.
Okay.
So I'd like to call on the next pastor, Pastor Banjo, to please take his response. Then we'll come back to Pastor Nwankwo.
All right. Okay. I'd like to start by saying thanks for this great opportunity to be on this platform. And I just want to start by talking about what my spiritual father had mentioned earlier on about the youth churches and the senior churches coexisting, not necessarily in competition or in conflict, but they can actually work together, whichever way each church or each region or each continent prefers. And I believe so much that the senior churches should allow the young ones to actually express themselves, not necessarily by downplaying their efforts in any church. And then there is also something that I think Pastor Adewale mentioned, which Bumi had referred to. And I'll give a personal experience also. I grew up in RCCG at a very tender age. And I remember under the leadership of Pastor Peter Mekina, who is currently the AGO, giving me an opportunity to minister in the adult church at the age of 13. And that experience alone had given me some level of confidence, and it gave me the motivation to remain in the church to an extent that even till now, over 25 years after, I'm still able to be in the leadership, pastor a church. I've pastored a young adult and youth church, and I'm able to say that that experience has given me the privilege to also harness the gifts, the potentials in me. Now, if the same model is being used across many churches, both on foreign mission and at home, I believe it can really help in helping our young ones to get integrated. One of the language that has been used so far is this language of integration. And I believe that that is very, very essential. As we talk about the young adults and youth churches, we all, not just in Nigeria, but also on foreign missions in all of the continents, I believe that we will do just well. In Kenya, where we operate, there are so many cultural differences from what is obtainable back home. And I believe that some of the policies that we have used in Kenya has actually helped us to integrate the locals into the church. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response, sir. That has been extremely awesome, intuitive, and would now like to go on to the next question, which has to do with digital presence. So with digital presence of a good number of our churches, should we consider branding our presence on social media platform, or should this be the same as the Christian social responsibility? Basically, from your perspective, would it not be a good time for us to increase our publicity on the great impact that Redeemed is making, has made, and is still intending to make towards our social responsibility efforts? I would like to pass this question on to Pastor Tam Brispe. Pastor Tam, please go ahead with this.
Let me unmute myself.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly, sir.
We're talking about
the Christian social responsibility. And branding, yes.
And branding. Well, I think it goes back to one thing, one common theme, you know, that we see in the church, and it also cuts into a lot of the things that we've talked about. So different region for different mode of operation. Now, one of the things, and I will just come home and use ourselves, one of the things that we have found out that we've done and we've been doing, we've been involved in Christian social responsibility a lot, especially at this time. And it was something that we intentionally went into. And we were doing this for a number of years, but found out that within the community, it was as if we're not doing anything, right? So we asked ourselves, we sat down with our leadership and asked ourselves the question, you know, why is it that people really do not know what we're doing, right? So we intentionally went from that point and started to, not just branding, but started to work with the community to ensure that anything we want to do, right, they know what we want to do, and we share that with them, and they work collaboratively with us, right? So we have the platform, we share it on the platform, we share it with the community who shares it on their platform because they reach more, right? Now, in doing that, we found out that it was easier for us to showcase, if I'll use the word showcase, that's not what word, but showcase our CSR effort. So back to the question, I think, yes, it is good to do publicity on a social media platform. However, look at where you're located and see if you have opportunities to partner with organizations, to partner with groups that would actually take that message further, because we have those groups in Canada as an example. Our community association is so strong. The minute you partner with them, they take your message of what you're doing and share that message with both the government, both the community, both the neighborhood. Just this year, we had the Minister of Social Services come see us in church and said, you know, we need to see you because you guys are doing so much and all of that. But that came, and we've been doing this for years, but that only came when we started to partner with our community association. Then they started to tell them what we were doing. So we didn't have to do that anymore. So they came, did a 2-hour interview and took that to the government. They said they wanted to share it with the government, to the point now where they said they realized that the churches actually impact the community more than the other organizations. So they are now trying to channel funds directly to churches because they say you guys hit the community more than other organizations. So I think, yes, social media platform, but partnership also works. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. And from what I gather, basically is extremely important for us to know the community in which we find ourselves in as a church. What is the need of the community? And as a church, how can we actually even meet these needs? By meeting the needs of the community, we get a wider audience in order for the community to not just accept us as a church, but to also spread that same word that we might not even have otherwise reached out to as far a network as they would reach out. So intentionality is important, not just for social media, but actually even physically with our communities. Thanks for that response, sir. I'll now like to pass it on to Pastor Tunde Badru, my co-anchor, to please take the further responses. Pastor Tunde Badru.
Oh, yes, thank you very much, Pastor Bumi Ajagunna. Can we also have Pastor Emmanuel Adewale from the US to talk around, branding, our CSR? We've had from Pastor Tam that we should not just think about the social media platform, we should also have some collaboration with the community. Are there other aspects of community outreaches that we need to improve on, just so that we get the right impact and, if I could say, some recognition and credit for what we are doing?
Yes, sir. I think that, am I muted?
You're good.
Okay. I think, yes, we can have a more central approach to how we minister to our community. Sorry, I was, let me just catch up a little bit. So I think we can have a central approach. What we are doing with Hope for You in the US is good, but I think what Hope for You is doing is not open to everybody in terms of sharing the information with all our people. So I think that when there are things happening, we should have a way where we inform the local churches how they can partner in such a way that we will have one general and robust approach to the issue at hand. And then, of course, the social media is available there. I think we should use the social media also to talk about it. It's very clear now that we cannot do that whole approach of let the left hand not know what the right hand is doing. We need to make everybody know what we are doing by the reason of publicizing it on social media. I don't think we are bragging. I just think we are making, we are amplifying and making mention what we are doing, because Jesus even said, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good work. So I think there's an element of announcing what we are doing out there. And I think also there should be an element of coordination, because without coordination, I think the other pastor from Canada mentioned, without coordination, we will not be able to have the necessary advantage of being part of our community in terms of CSR. We will not be able to harness that advantage to be able to increase our mission in our local places where we find ourselves.
Thank you very much. I would like Pastor Dari Adeboye to weigh in on this as well. During the COVID-19, the heat of it in Nigeria, RCCG did quite a lot. And we saw that a little bit in the social media. It appeared to a few that, well, I think Redeem is making a shift. Is there a deliberate attempt? Can you give us some insight into what actually happened, or what are we trying to do moving forward?
Thank you, sir, for the opportunity. We have to put into consideration the kind of spiritual parents we have in our Father in the Lord and our Mother in the Lord, who believe that whatever one does in the secret, God will reward openly, which means that, going back to what Pastor Emmanuel just said, that our left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing. So we had to, in the background, prevail on them that this is not showing off. This is simply letting the light shine so that people can know what is going on, because the church especially was coming under attack. And when you're talking about the church coming under attack, they are looking for the brightest light to attack. And therefore, majority of the focus was on RCCG, as if RCCG was the only church that existed. So they've been attacking our father, attacking our mother, attacking the church, until some of these things were now being pushed into these spaces before some of those voices who were quite loud had to be muted. Even their followers had to tell them, freeze your mouth, freeze your tongue, So just a couple of days ago, a senior pastor sent me a video of another general of another ministry going to the slums, picking up a young boy who was a tout and, working with him for a couple of years and reforming him. And he made a statement that almost got me offended. But then I had to think about it again so that I would not respond. He was saying this was what RCCG is supposed to be known for. And I almost said to him in response that, sir, at this level in RCCG, because he's not just a regional pastor, he's a SADGO and above. You mean to tell me you don't know what RCCG is doing in CSR on every platform? Just because nobody is putting a video camera recording every single thing for self-aggrandization and self-projection and all that does not mean we are not doing much more. So if it simply means that we now have two cases, the outsiders don't know, and worse still, the insiders don't know. So therefore, we need to do something to make sure that everybody knows what God is doing by the special grace.
So thank you very much. Before I let you go, should there be a standardization to that? Should there be some branding, the way of doing it, so we don't cross lines that our parents in the Lord will not now say, well, guys, stop it. We knew you guys would. We should have some branding around it or standardization around it.
Absolutely, sir. I think that we should be speaking with one voice and acting with one mind. So there needs to be a policy that makes it across board, in it functioning equally. And having said that, even though there's a policy making it work across board internationally, we can still work locally in achieving our aim. For example, I'm based in Eket. I know of a local bank in Eket that operates, in so many areas. If given the permission as part of policy, one can work with that bank and make use of some of their guilt money because of the overcharging that they have charged their customers. I think it will go a long way. The banks want to wash away their sin by the money that they have overcharged and they have stolen and whatever they have done. And we also want to do good works. And knowing fully well with the pandemic, etc., the funding coming into the church is diminished. So you're wondering, where do you get the funding to carry out this work? So partner with this bank. The branding is on the platform of whatever you're doing, and you're still getting the work done. I think that will be a necessary tool for us.
You excellent response. Thank you very much, sir. The last on this question before I pass it on, before we go to the next and the final question in this round, will be Pastor Femi Debo Omidokun from Canada, just to share your thoughts as well before we close question 4 and go to 5 and round up the very first round. Pastor Femi Debo Omidokun.
Thank you very much, Pastor Badru. I want to corroborate what other speakers have said, particularly Pastor Dare. I think the important thing here is we need to change our strategy in order to meet the needs of our teeming followers. The fact that Jesus Christ preached in a canoe does not mean we have to sit in a canoe in this age and time to preach. We have to modernize and upgrade into what is befitting for this generation, particularly when we're talking about the young people. For us to get them involved, it has to be something that is appealing to them. So I believe every CSR effort we are making has to be publicized, and we have to have good engagement. That's what I call ecosystem. Here in our region in Canada, we engage the local authorities, the municipality, staff and councillors and all that. They come out to wherever we are reaching out to the community, they take pictures, and it will surprise you, they go back to the government website, they post it there, they put it on their print media that, oh, this church, this church is making this so much effort. And the interesting thing here is this is a church of Black people, visible minority, making so much effort to ensure Canadians are good, particularly in times of their social well-being during this pandemic period. So we need to make a lot of effort. And like Pastor Dari rightly said, it's important we standardize it. The fact that we're showing the world what God is using us to accomplish, it's not about bragging. It's not about showing off. It's about expanding the kingdom business by telling the world, even churches are doing this, and we are excited to serve God in this capacity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Well, the final question in this round is on sports. Sports command a lot of followership all over the world. At over 3 billion, for example, follow soccer alone. You know, and other churches are taking advantage of this, and even organizations are taking advantage of, you know, sports. Coca-Cola, for example, will drive the business through sports. There are other churches that you know, you find them in soccer league, in their premiership in their country. I mean, some of them even in Nigeria. Now, I know we do we have some efforts in direction of sports. Our father-in-law himself being a sportsman. But is there something, can we take it to the next level? And if we must, what should we be doing as far as sports is concerned, you know, for outreaches beyond what we are doing right now? I will want 3 pastors back to back to speak to these. Actually, 3 of them. Pastor Laolu Abioye, Daniel Olawande, Temi Astro. For sake of time, I will have to give you 1 minute each to tell us what you think of sports for outreaches. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for the opportunity. And I want to say good day to everyone. Sport, like you've rightly said, commands a lot of followership. RCCG have started in some very, little way. And in the young adults and youth affairs, we do hold sport festival, every other year. My take is just going to be that, as has been said before, the church needs to be more intentional about it. We need to get pastors and leaders that have passion or are professionals in that sector and group them together and let them sit and come up with something for the church, that we can use to reach out to the grassroots. We have several people that are doing several things in all our churches. If that mountain can also be faced and the people can also rise in that, I believe coming up with a policy from those who are sports, oriented is going to help the mission to move to greater heights. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Pastor Daniel Olawande, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak at this symposium. I would like to say that for sport, we need to take it to a little bigger space, like having a football club, probably starting from the local league. With that, we'll get a lot of people who are passionate in that regard. Actually, RCCG is doing a lot in terms of sport. I know some of our team, some of our people from our different churches who have been part of one national sport festival representing their states. I mean, they are our members. We also spoke about the sports festival in the youth affairs. This thing also needs funding. What makes sports is the funding. What makes sport tick is the funding. So the church, we have to be intentional about it and have probably a long-term plan of funding this dimension of evangelism. So we see it not just as sport, but as an outreach, whereby we can reach out to more people, we can get more young people involved by funding it. And when we fund it, probably we start a local club, get the people involved, get them saved. And the trademark is that you are a member of our team, you are saved, you are spirit-filled, you are a Christian on the field, not a footballer who is a Christian. you are a Christian playing football or any of the games. So we are actually discipling people, but in the sports sector. So we should see it as a discipline model, but not just the pulpit discipleship now, but the discipleship on the field, discipleship in the sports sector. I think that's all I have to say about sports.
Thank you very much. If we have Temi Astrop from Australia in, I don't know how much of sport goes on in Australia, but what will you say that sports can do in your mission field from an outreach, evangelism, and missions point of view? Pastor Temi Astrop. Okay, doesn't seem like we have him there. I think before I pass it on to Pastor Bumi, are you there? Okay. Can we have your thoughts on sports as a tool for evangelism, outreach, and missions, particularly from Australia perspective?
Looks like Temi Astrop isn't here.
Okay. We'll get back to him on other questions, to her rather, on other questions. But before I pass on to you, Pastor Bumi, please let me ask the Assistant General Overseer, Youth and Young Adult, and this question I've been asked directly. It's a straightforward question from people that are interested in sports. Is there a reason why RCCG will not have, say, a football team, as we call, or soccer team, as we'll call it in the US, in Nigeria, playing in the local league, for example, and working the way all the way to, say, the Premiership and so on and so forth in Nigeria? Is it a deliberate thing not to do that, or is it something we are working on? Pastor Peter, make it.
Well, it's not deliberate that we are not in the league. Even though I'm sure you are aware that at the time, City of David had a club and was doing quite well. But you must understand that it's very capital intensive. Even some state governments have had to abandon their clubs because of finance. We are interested, and I know that the mission is looking into it. That's why this discussion is very important. And we can make recommendations as to how we can come out to evolve a strategy, both for financing and for starting a club and so on. But you must know that it's capital intensive. But from this platform, we can make suggestions to the governing council. But briefly, I wanted to say something, even though we have discussed that on this foreign mission policy.
That's okay.
I just wanted to let you know that the governing council is constantly looking at the foreign missions policy. That's why what we are doing on this platform is very important. Once we send the input, I'm sure they will make good use of it to work on the future. The only thing is that, like everyone has been saying, we need to rethink and retool. And it will not just be sending people on mission, whether they have a calling or not. It's now time that we look at people who have a calling, people who are not just seeking for greener pastures, looking for where they are going to work. There are a lot of things we need to do, and that's why this discussion is very important. As regards the CSRO, the major problem we are having is with some of our leaders. The policy, especially in charge of CSRO, but some people want to do CSRO the way they like. One major challenge with leadership with our people in the Redeemed Christian Church of God is that some people just want to do it the way they like. It's not necessarily because that is how it's done in their clime or in their nations. They just want to do it the way they like. So we have several cliques who don't want to abide by a major policy of the mission. But I think as the discussion has started, we can all come up with something, and I can assure you that Daddy will be so happy to see the outcome of this panel, and then we'll be able to work on the future. God bless you.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate you. Now over to you, Pastor Olubumi Ajagunna.
Thank you very much, sir. Just like you had mentioned, and I can even allude to the fact that even Canada is very big on sports. Sports like hockey, basketball. I agree with the fact that it's extremely important for us to delve into, just revamping a new, sports team. It doesn't have to be soccer. It could be region specific. What is the region, or what is the country? What are they big on sports? What sports are they particularly big on? And so with that said, I would like to pose this same question to Pastor Akintomide Oyebola on what is Canada thinking of when it comes to the sports ministry, and what should be the next phase of sports, globally. Pastor Akintomide Oyebola, over to you, sir.
Thank you for having me, ma. Unfortunately, I'm not very, very involved with sports, but the little that I would say is that it's definitely an important part of lives, of people's lives, especially with the youth and the young adults. So I think as a church, we just need to do what we can and incorporate sport activities, invest as much as we can, maybe not going more than we can do, but as much as we can do, invest. It's definitely a tool that we can use to reach the unchurched, because sports is it's a very important part of people's lives. So in Canada, like you mentioned, there are a lot of different sports that people are involved in. I think as the church, we should definitely take a look and see how can we bring these activities to the church, and how can we as the church get involved in these activities. It would be a tool to reach out to many more people.
Thank you very much for that, sir. It's no going that even growing up in Nigeria, once there's a sports event, Premier League or whatever it is, you find out that the streets are empty. Sports just has a way of bringing people together. You either find people in homes or in cinemas, or just clustered together watching sports team by team. So it's a very good tool, like you have said, to bring people together. I'd like to find, just more response from UK on what your recommendation will be to getting sports to the next level. With that said, I would invite Pastor Michael Ayo to please give his response on this. Over to you, sir.
In regards to taking sports to the next level, I think anything that we do as Christians, we should strive to offer excellence. I believe our God is a God of excellence, and everything we do should emulate him in that respect. So when it comes to discipline, when it comes to training, and when it comes to facilities, etc. But I think another brilliant thing in regards to sports is, or one thing rather, in regards to sports, is that quite often sports is on Sunday. Quite often sport is on Sunday, normally during Sunday service hours. So I think another thing we could potentially look at would be a church that caters maybe specifically or towards those who are in the football or sporting field. So maybe having services which are predominantly or mainly after 4 p.m., 5 p.m. So you can have your football match, you can rest, you can freshen up, and you can still enjoy the presence of the Lord. So definitely the sports is definitely a brilliant avenue for us to express ourselves and for us to share faith and definitely get Jesus out there.
Wow. Thank you for that. We have now finished our first round on retooling the strategy in a post-pandemic world. And we're now moving on to our next round, which is the cultural diversity and inclusion. And this round basically talks about, the different cultures that we have, what is the demographics of what we have right now in our different churches, in our different parishes, our regions, provinces, and how can we, just move that to the next level from where we are right now. With that said, I would ask our first question, knowing that cultural diversity in RCCG is clearly entrenched as number 3 in our vision statement, to have a member of RCCG in every family of all nations. And our foreign mission is one of the vehicles to make this happen, but doesn't seem to have delivered the results as of now. So what are we missing, and what should we be doing sort of differently from what we're doing right now? With that, I'd like to pass this one over to Pastor Fumi Obilano to hear her perspective on this, cultural diversity and inclusion. Pastor Obilano, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful time so far. Thank you to all the people making various contributions. I think this has been truly rewarding. On the issue of cultural diversity, what has happened is we have tried to stay put in our comfort zones. It's easier to plant a church and just bring in people like you into the church and not go that extra mile to include other people, because that will cost a lot in terms of effort and in terms of investments. So what we have all done, or what most people have done, is we have started the churches. Our own people have streamed in, and the offerings are good. It's coming in regularly. We are able to buy churches. We are able to do what we need to do, and we are comfortable. But now we are being pushed, because we now find that the children who are growing up are pushing back on this. And what they are doing is, we've trained them, we've invested in them, and they belong to a different culture. They are still in our church, but they don't think the way we think. And so what do? The minute they are able to go, they leave, because we raised them, but the culture is different. It's not just the generation, but it's also a cultural thing. And so we have to come to a place where we now have to invest intentionally and consciously in bringing other people in. What does this mean? It means we have to go out, bring them in. We have to change some of the things that are not doctrinal, in terms of, there are some basic doctrinal things we cannot change, but there is a lot of cultural undertones that we have, that we intertwine with our doctrines, that need to go, so that we can be more culturally acceptable. And we need to train people who are from other cultures and give them a path to leadership with us, in a way that when other people come, they will see people like them in our leadership, and they will feel comfortable to be able to stay. So what we are facing mostly is the cultural divide, and it's going to cost us. It's going to cost us patience. It's going to cost us money. It's going to cost us self-sacrifice. We just have to, let go some of our own personal prejudices and allow people of other cultures to express their own culture, if it's not going to be doctrinally adverse to what we believe as foundational doctrines of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Thank you very much for that, ma'am. It's extremely key when we talk about people coming to our churches of different cultures. When they see people who are sort of similar to them, they feel a more sense of belonging. Now I'll pass it on to Pastor Badru for more responses from our panelists.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pastor Bumi. Earlier on, when we took the question on foreign mission policies, etc., we had from Asia, I believe we had from Australia as well, some of the challenges that they are facing. Now, beyond those challenges, I will like once again, Pastor Dipo Joseph, to speak to the best way or the quickest way to achieve the goal of having from every family in the world a member of RCCG, because that is entrenched in our vision statement. So that becomes a matter of vision. And if that is going to, of course, that vision is relying on us, particularly in the foreign missions. So we are looking for the Indians, we are looking for the Chinese, we are looking for the Americans, we are looking for everyone. Now, so beyond all the things we said earlier on, what will you think will be what we should be doing right away to make sure that we begin to address that item, vision on our vision statement? I think you are muted.
Thank you, Pastor Badru. I want to say specifically that one of those things that we need to do is never to look down on their culture. If you want them to know Christ and to come and be part of Redeemed Christian Church of God. Number two, we should also reduce our own culture to the BRS minimum. You see, most of the choir, they are still singing Yoruba song, they are still singing Igwe, whereas their own culture, their own song, they left them out. Everybody wants to, to be carried along. So apart from doing that, then let us also try as much as possible to get at least one or two of them in every parish and raise them as missionaries. Let them know what to stand for. Most of the parishes, if you go to most of the parishes, you see Africans, many Africans there, neglecting the indigenes because they think it's only the Africans that can bring money, that the indigenes, that they are so stingy, they cannot bring money. So because of that, they need money to plan parish, so they try to focus their attention on the Africans. That is not good enough. Let us really go out, train these indigenes. If it is possible, let us give them scholarship to go on mission school or to attend Bible college. Let us try as much as possible to even look at some of them that are of lower caste. For example, in India, we have caste. And we really need to make sure that we also treat them as human beings, not as they are being treated as if they are nothing. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. I will combine question 1 and 2, Pastor Bome, I hope you don't mind, just for sake of time, because they're kind of similar. And I want the AGO to please, just because of the privilege of having you on this platform today. Now, the conversation has been on for a while. The fact that we don't have, the locals on our ordination list, and that usually is because the requirements, for ordination, it's not something they easily, could achieve. Shouldn't we begin to, look at those requirements for ordination, or even if they don't need ordination to become pastors, or take some leadership role in our churches? Because in my mind, I think if I get to a church and everybody that, there are ministers there, all of them are from Nigeria, it only means that, alluding to earlier on, there was a time, particularly when Daddy Gio took over in 1981, 39 parishes, I believe. And at that time, the farthest we went was probably Kwara State in Ilorin. Everything was Southwest. But then Daddy Gio came, brought some initiatives, and then we began to see people from other tribes. For example, from all the tribes. In Nigeria and RCCGs, from every single, Daddy Gio, with creativity, with wisdom of God, began to do certain things that allow, some inclusion. Shouldn't there be some policy trust that will accelerate, the locals, becoming pastors or ministers, empower, just so that, because until they become leaders, in our churches, that we are going to attract, people from their culture. I don't know what to think if there's a complete family having someone who is a member of RCCG. Pastor Peter Emekenasa.
Yeah, let me say this. I think we need to be having this kind of discussion with our leaders, our various leaders, provincial pastors, regional pastors, SADGOs, AGOs. We need to be having this discussion with them, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm a member of the governing council. I know that that is not as rigid as some of our leaders. And I can say that without feeling that someone can contradict me. I just give you an example. I remember one year we had a meeting with senior pastors, and we had a very strong debate as to the years that people should, how many years from deacon before they become full pastor, from before they become assistant pastor, from assistant pastor to full pastor. And in that meeting, many of us were saying, why are we increasing the number of years? Why don't we just look at their giftings, their callings, and so on? And we concluded in that meeting that we should take this thing to Daddy. And we got to a meeting with Daddy because people wanted it to be 5 years as a deacon before you are made an AP, about 5 years or 6 years before you are made a full pastor. And when we got to that meeting, you know what, that when they just presented it, Daddy said, why are you people increasing the years? He said, okay, you. How many years did you spend in Redeem before I ordained you? That one said 2. You, how many years were you before I ordained you? That one said 1.5 years. This one said, okay, why are you now increasing the number of years? I was in the meeting. And what obtained in that meeting? The truth is that the mission is not so rigid. It's some of our leaders who sometimes want to bring some of these things. I can tell you that very clearly. But for example, in East Africa, we are about 70% indigenized, about 70%. In fact, we have a nation, I'm sure some of you know, Seychelles. All the pastors are not Nigerians. The national pastor is not a Nigerian. And when it comes to ordination, when we make requests to the General Overseer as to the number of years and so on, he has always been very, very understanding. And it's also happening among the youth. I'm sure you are aware, when we were creating youth provinces, and people said, oh, if you are not a pastor for 10 years, you cannot be APICP, you cannot be assistant provincial pastor, you cannot be a full pastor. I made some recommendations to Daddy. Daddy said, some people were assistant pastors, but they were made assistant provincial pastors. They were not up to 10 years. Some people were ordained just 2-3 years, and then they became provincial pastors. The mission is ready to look at our suggestions. Let's just, like I said before, this platform is very important. Let's articulate these things together, send them to the General Overseer. I'm so sure the Governing Council will look at them. But my appeal is that our leaders in the various nations should also learn to abide by rules and regulations. Because if even after we have discussed this and these things are sent to the General Overseer and the General Overseer say, okay, let's go ahead, you still find some principalities who will want to do things their own way. That has been the major challenge. It's not a question of whether the mission is amenable to changes. Daddy believes in the generalization. In fact, there is a policy coming out very soon. I'm sure some of you will see some policies that not be spending so many years in the mission field before we find an indigenous person. There's a policy that will come, and I'm sure this discussion will help that policy that will encourage us to be training the indigenous, sending them for Bible college and other training, and setting up Bible colleges, looking at the cultural aspects of their lives in their various nations. We are doing that in Kenya now. We send people for training, and we're having a lot of indigenous pastors. I think all our leaders need to key into this, and I'm really impressed that we are all discussing this, and we should also impress this on our leaders so that when a policy comes out, they will be ready to accept the policy. God bless you.
Amen. Thank you very much. It's very interesting that the AGO Pastor Peter spoke about the youth as well having challenges with ordination, and it's part of question 2 here, that when you check ordination list, because of those same hurdles, you find out that many of the youths are not given that space. Pastor Dara Adeboye, please, and then I want Pastor Bisi Akonde and Pastor Kola Oyeneye, just from a Nigerian perspective, what is your experience of the young adults being ordained, but not just ordination, also giving positions like leaders of units and departments, and just being made very visible? Are there bottlenecks? Are there improvement that we can see, just like the AGO was explaining? What's your youth pastor at that level experience as far as this is concerned?
Thank you, sir. Just following up what my Oga just said, AGO, young adults and youths, it is very essential that we are not stuck to a particular time set, a particular set of credentials, a particular set of this. We need to balance it. Yes, there is a need for seasoning so that we don't have what I call accidental pastors who go about causing accident, car wrecks, and injuring souls of members of the church because they were just accidental. They were not properly cooked and are not ready to carry on the post that we are putting them in. Nonetheless, it must be mentioned that we have a lot of young adults and youths who carry this fire, who carry the passion, who carry the anointing, that if you don't make use of them on time, another ministry will grab them. I was on a flight recently from England, and a general overseer was sitting next to me, and he said, "We love you, RCCG." And I said, "Why?" I was even thinking he was going to say, "Oh, we love you because of our Father in the Lord." He said, "We love you because you are the bakery of our ministry. You bake the bread, and all we do is we just take the bread and we are the one eating it." And I that hit me so hard because he didn't even say it with a sense of reservation. He said it with almost mocking us. So when that came in, I had the conversation with Daddy. I believe we were in Israel when I had that conversation with him. I said, "Daddy, we have a lot of young adults and youth on campus who are presidents on campus, sitting over congregations in their fellowship, 1,000, 1,005, 2,000, 2,005. Can we ordain them on campus before they graduate? Because many of them, when they graduate from campus, another ministry just grabs them. I'm not going to mention the name of the ministry. Another ministry just grabs them, settles them, and they begin to fly. Or another ministry does not grab them. They come into a normal church, and the pastor just benches them. Why? Because number one, the pastor is intimidated because of the grace upon the young man's life or upon the young lady's life, and just benches them. And out of frustration, these people will go, either go and start their own ministry, or they completely lose the fire. So it is important that we are not stuck on this whole issue of it must be this, it must be that. Everything must be weighted by its own merit. I think that's my humble submission for now.
You're muted, sir.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So please, Pastor Bisakonde, is there something that you would like to add to what Pastor Dari just shared, something that he didn't touch on, maybe?
Okay, thank you very much. I think Pastor Dari just spot on that one. We need to actually begin to look at this thing from the perspective of performance, much more than the perspective of how long somebody has stayed and things like that, especially for those who are coming in from the university. I think we need to go back there, pick it from there, groom someone from there, and get them to do the work that they need to do. How big I always say it's not a subject of age. If somebody has the right calling and has the right placement, then we should be considering such people and giving them the room to express themselves in the area that they have been called to express themselves. So the number of years, if people have, like our beloved AGO has said rightly, if people were ordained 2 years and they did well, it only means that there are other people too who can be ordained in 1 year and they will still do very, very well and manage the system. So sometimes for a church as big as the RCCG, we must begin to think about a kind of a dual system of operation that allows the traditional system to go the way it's going so that some people are not hot, but also allows a new breed to be rising and making things work so that we will have a good filler. You know, when we have a church and we look at the altar and everybody is gray-haired, it only sends a signal to the entire church that, you know, now we are talking about diversity. I think it was T.D. Jakes that said that diversity is when you invite me to the dance. Inclusion is when you invite me to dance. We are practicing diversity. We invite people to the dance, but right now we have to be inviting people to the dance. Let them be dancing. And like somebody rightly said, it's not when we have a special program, oh, young people come and preach. No, when we have programs, whether special or not special, there must be room for young people to also express themselves. That's where everybody sees it's a church, it's a body, and the part of the body are working together. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Pastor Kola Yeah, please, just now, because Pastor Dari, and Pastor Bisi Akoni has spoken so well on this, but I have you to comment and bring your views also.
Very much. I'll comment very quickly, and they've already covered the most important part. But I think that, sir, the question actually, I think at some point would have to be sort of pushed to our leaders as well, because at the end of the day, they get to decide, make some of these decisions. And I think one principle that I think leaders must begin to get used to is the principle of no success without successors. The success of Moses was crystallized by the emergence of Joshua. The success of Elijah was crystallized by the emergence of Elisha. And I think that, as long as these three things are present in young people in RCCG, one, the evidence of the infilling of the Holy Spirit, two, that they are disciples of Christ, and three, that they are committed to the mission of the Redeemed Christian Church of God, I don't think that age and barriers and the length that is spent within the mission or in a particular level of ordination should stop them from emerging and rising. So I believe very strongly that for us to appeal to a new generation of young people that we've been talking about earlier on in the conversation, the Gen Zs and the Gen Ys, I think that we must begin to deliberately and intentionally push forward a new generation of young leaders that would help our fathers and our mothers carry the burden of leadership in the Redeemed Christian Church of God nationwide. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very well said. Pastor Bumi Ajagun, over to you. I think we should go straight to question 3 and the final question in this round.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate all the responses. Basically, one thing I have learned from at least those responses, especially from Pastor Bisi Akoni, is that on campus fellowships, basically picking young adults from the schools and from the fellowship and universities is one key way, not just to overcome the generational gap, but also the cultural gap. And campus fellowship really fed the church in our own generation, and it's how churches here in the Western world are actually built. Thank you very much for those responses. Now we'll move on to question number 3 in this round. What are the procedural errors made in the past in sending missionaries to the foreign missions or in allowing members outside to start out parishes in foreign land? Pastors have to relocate and withdraw their children from school or even the neighborhood that they've always known. So what actions will be required to avoid making such mistakes that you identify in the future? And what will the specific steps in achieving cultural diversity in Redeemed be? I would like to pass this question first to Asia, Pastor Daniel Obot, then after 2 minutes to Pastor Shola Oludoyi to give his responses on this question. Pastor Daniel Obot, over to you, sir. In the absence of Pastor Daniel Obot, I would like to pass it on to Pastor Shola Oludoyi. Pastor Shola, please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much again. I think the first thing I would love to say, and I wanted to comment on the last thing question that was asked, but perhaps at the end, is that we need to de-emphasize the issue of ordination. And now maybe shaking some tables here, but I don't think it's actually as important as to doing the work itself. Just from the last question, I think if people are gifted, people are called, and we identify them, they don't need ordination to do the work, because otherwise the scramble for ordination has become a thing that so many young people are actually not too interested in anymore from our experience in this place. I started pastoring as a brother in my 20s, and I think that is extremely critical if we're going to make progress. So I just thought I'd throw that in. Now, for foreign mission, I think when we became regional pastors, we made a feasibility study and wrote a report that we passed on to Daddy and his CMB in Nigeria. And the reason was because we felt that you can't take people who do not have an understanding of a society to go to the place and go and pastor in the place. There must be education, there must be orientation, there must be acculturation. Now, if these things are out of place, it becomes very difficult for them to function well. What do I mean by this is that it's not uncommon to find
people in foreign missions going to replicate Nigeria church where they find themselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's what they know, is their comfort zone. But it is very wrong but the danger is that we may not be able to move the church to new territories in terms of personnel. So that means we must be ready to learn the language of the place, to understand the culture where we send people to, and for the people to be ready to sit down. Let me put it this way. You can't send someone and expect them to grow the church in 1 year like it's grown where they're coming from. If you actually go to do a sustained work that would last the test of time. So issue of language comes in. Age of the people you're sending also matters a lot. You know, you don't send people who are retired to go to foreign mission. It doesn't work. You see, because why? Risk-taking becomes a problem for them. So I feel we need to look at it. We've written a report on this that is there in the camp, so that we need to look at a few parameters we use in choosing people that are sent abroad. For instance, we sent churches, we planted churches in Europe in a few places. Most of the guys are sent were in their 20s when we send them, so they could adapt easily. There was a particular mission we sent people to for almost a year. We couldn't grow more than 4 people, 5 people, but it didn't matter. We kept paying their salary, and I paid someone's salary for more than 12 years. But today, the church has opened up the whole of Scandinavia. Now, most of the time when we send people from Africa to go to foreign missionaries, after a year or 2, they stop paying them their stipend. People get frustrated. Many want to relocate. Many are looking for papers to go to USA and migrate elsewhere. So we need to look at the whole thing. It's going to be expensive, but it can be achievable if we are willing to actually work in foreign missions, because it's an expensive project, I think.
Thank you very much, sir. Basically, and I would like to pass this question over as well to Pastor Mrs. Fumi Obilano. And I guess from what you have mentioned, we focused on Nigerians basically because it's the easy way out. But we shouldn't always just do that. We should also look at adaptability. We should look at age. We should look at all other, factors as well. Pastor Obilano, over to you, ma, for your response.
Pastor Oladuri, thank you so much. I mean, that was a very good answer. And he actually did hit a big note at the end, which was that you have to, we have to invest. We have to invest money. He made mention of paying somebody's salary for 12 years. And when you want to send somebody out to the mission field, it's better to find somebody in that mission field who is an indigent that you can actually train. And we want to send people out who can quickly adjust culturally. When we send people out to a culture that they are not familiar with, to a system that they are not familiar with, we are setting them up for failure. So it is critical that we use nationals or people who can quickly adjust culturally, people who can also get the necessary education to function in a different environment. This is very critical for us if we are going to succeed in our quest for sending people out to the mission field. We have to be ready to invest. We have somebody out in Trinidad. We've been supporting that person now, I think, for close to 10 years. But she's from Trinidad, so it's easy for her to relate to the people. To send somebody out there who does not relate to them, the job will be done, but it will be like cutting meat with a blunt knife. It takes too much pain, too much effort. Why don't we deploy the resources that are necessary and cut short the time of our pain by supporting the kind of resource that we need financially, and letting the people who can do the work actually do it, and not just for people who want to find a way of escape somewhere else.
Thank you very much, Ma. That was a very brilliant answer. Thank you very much, Ma. I don't know if is Pastor Daniel Obert ready? We want to hear from an Asian perspective.
Okay.
Please go ahead, sir.
I will be using a model of the Assemblies of God Church, because actually I was trained by them before I came into Redeemed Christian Church of God. After my Bible college, what they told me was, we will settle you somewhere give you all the necessary backing, but you have to learn the language. And most of my colleagues that graduated with me, all of them are settled. The Americans, when they come here, they only come to preach and they go. They allow the locals to take charge of everything here. That is the mistake the mission has been doing. When we bring in our people, you will not be, there are a lot of policies here, government policies and all those things you need to follow up with. You have to be familiar with most of their policies. I remember once when they sent me to go to the interior, I had to sit down with them on the floor, which we don't do in Nigeria. We have seats and everything. Yeah, they will tell you sit on the mat with them. You have to get used to all these cultures for you to be able to break into them. They want you to dress like them. So these are some of the things the errors that the mission has been making. When you send foreigners, Nigerians here, it is difficult for them to break into the culture. I'm not saying the mission should not send foreigners, Nigerians, but we should know who and who we are sending. People that are ready to follow what is on ground. People that are ready to sacrifice a lot of things so that they can achieve the purpose why they are being sent. The mission, the vision of is to get at least a person in every family. Most of the churches I planted here, most of the parishes I planted here are all indigenous parishes, which I am paying. I pay the locals, even though some of them are few, but we still encourage them. And that is how we can win them over. Please let us still work on this if we want to achieve our purpose of getting a member of every family or to be a member of RCCG worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I guess adaptability, understanding your priorities is key. And we also got a comment from YouTube saying that we can start exchange programs among our youth such that they go to other countries, and from other countries, they also come to our country. And, it just helps with that mix, and it helps us catch them young, that approach. So there's a full mix of the cultural, integrations in all of them. Thank you all for the responses. I'll now like to pass it on to Pastor Tuni Badru to take more responses. This is a very interesting topic.
It is. Thank you very much, Pastor Bumiaja. I also have a comment from the audience, or I think from the YouTube. It says that we really have not planted campus fellowships in North America. Very few parishes do so, and yet it is a major key to the generational and cultural gap. Pastor Fikayo, I think this is your domain. Is there something we are getting wrong as far as campus fellowships are concerned? Pastor Daria Adeboye was speaking to that, in Nigeria, and the impact campus fellowship, has on the emergence of the young adult churches, etc. Is there something, this question is directed at North America, that we're not doing much as far as that is concerned? I know it's a domain. What do you say?
I would agree with that. Thank you again for having me. I would agree with that we don't have, we haven't invested enough in that direction. And this is something that I believe it's an avenue that is really waiting to be exploited, or explored, I should say rather, where at least every church congregation that is in a major city is close to a campus. One of the things that we started doing here in Alexandria was we sort of, we decided we were going to go into any schools within a 10-mile radius of us, any universities or colleges. We're going to provide them with transportation to get them down to church. And they were going to have their own point man. There would be someone who would take points, who would take leadership. And then we would begin to mentor them, and they'll have a connect group on campus so that they can have their own small group Bible study. So what we started doing was, instead of having Bible study meetings in church on Tuesdays, we just have Bible study everywhere. So there are different Bible study groups, and the Bible study groups on campus then become a campus fellowship. When you do that, of course, what will happen is that they take ownership. There's a lot of autonomy there, and they begin to become a unit of their own. They grow. So they're both growing spiritually. Their leadership skills are growing as well as numerically. So that's definitely an avenue that I believe that the church needs to explore a little bit more here in North America. And we haven't done enough to do that. That's, yeah, I agree.
Before we leave this question and go to the final round, you know, Canada is part of North America, Pastor Tam, and I know you have quite a bit to do with, you know, campuses and what have you. Do you have a 30 seconds, 1 minute response to specific, because the person that posted this question speaking to North America, what would be your recommendation as far as campus fellowship is concerned?
Unmute myself. Actually, I've been taking notes, and if you've looked at my note, one of the things I wrote there is this. We've talked about generational gap. We've talked about culture. We've talked about, you know, church planting. And on my note, I wrote that the biggest thing that we're missing is campus fellowship. We simply have not done it in North America. Let's be sincere. Yes, we may have bits and pieces here, but we simply have not done it. And it is something that we need to focus on. And for us, as an example, it's something that we are, you know, trying to go gung-ho on. Like, we need to do it. If we want to get people that understand the culture, you get them from schools. And like Pastor Bumi said, people like us, we came from campuses in Nigeria, right? We were trained in campuses in Nigeria, but we need to have Redeemers Fellowship on campuses so that when young adults and young people come out of campuses, they are already trained. They already have the qualification, they already have the experience, they already have, you know, they've grown spiritually. So getting into the church becomes so easy. Integrating in the church becomes so easy. And growing and fulfilling, you know, their calling in the church becomes really easy, right? So for me, I think we haven't done it, and it's something we need to intentionally focus on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, before we go to the final round, you know, the round that speaks to generational gap and how we manage that, we will go for for short commercials. It will be very, very short, so go nowhere. Sit down where you are, stand where you are, just stay tuned, because we are getting ready for the very, very final round, but we will call for some commercials now, I think 2 of them.
Deserve it, and your family deserves it. A chance to get on the right financial track.
Redeemer Federal Credit Union offers a variety of low-cost loans with flexible options for all your financing needs.
Finance or refinance secured and unsecured loans, which include but not limited to hassle-free auto loans with competitive interest rates. Bad credit? No problem. No credit? No problem.
Redeemer Federal Credit Union is here to help.
Visit redeemerfcu.org or call 903-213-6010 to get started. We're also located at 515 County Road 1118, Greenville, Texas 75401.
Get on the right financial track today with Redeemer Federal Credit Union.
You are welcome back. Thank you very much. Now we're going straight to round 3, the round that speaks to generational gap. It is still the Interchange, integrated church, for all round integration across, culture, across generation, and what have you. We've had 2 rounds already, and we are going for the final round, generational gap. Now, my first question, we go to Pastor Kola Oyineye. We want Pastor, Oludoyi, just so that we have a straight talk between a young adult and a senior pastor in this question. Now, when Daddy Gio joined RCCG in 1973, our estimate of average age of pastors somewhere about 50, maybe a little bit higher. And then Daddy Gio was ordained full pastor in 1975 and became the general overseer in 1981. By the time he became the general overseer, the average age crashed down to probably anywhere between 35 and 40, because himself at that time was 39 years old. Now today, the average age of pastors in RCCG, it doesn't matter where you go, whether it's North America, Nigeria, wherever you go, that average age is back at probably 50 or 55, maybe more. What must we do? What is it that happened, between 1981 and 1990 that brought the average age of pastors, to that, average of 35, to 39. It seems like, our pulpit is getting, just the baby boomers, or maybe some Gen X, and leadership across board. I know in Nigeria we have young adult churches, etc. But, right now, we have that average back, to about 50 or more. In North America, where I serve, I think is at 55. What is it that must be done differently so that we become a more, youthful, vibrant church that has, the 30s in leadership? What was done in the 80s that must be repeated now? I will start with Pastor Kola Oyineye, please.
Okay, so let me just say here that this is sort of like a setup question. So I'm going to try as much as possible to play safe, obey Proverbs 22:28 that we should not remove ancient landmarks. So I would try as much as possible, at the same time to be as frank as possible. I think if we look at, I like to go by data to try and look at what data is telling us, because I think that unless we're guided by, we must be guided by the Holy Spirit as sons and daughters of God. At the same time, we must bring the knowledge that the Holy Spirit gives to us to try and apply that to what data is telling us. So global average age currently is 29.6. That's the global average age. Now, I don't know the average age in the US. I didn't know this question was coming to me, but I will have looked it up. But I know that the average age in Nigeria is 19.5 years old. So globally, 29.6, 19.5, locally in Nigeria, where I'm currently based. Organizations, I've heard organizations that I've had the opportunity to, interact with the CEOs of some of these some really top organizations, and you hear them say, we don't want to hire people who are above 30. Some say we don't want to hire people who are above 35 for a particular set of roles and positions. And sometimes you wonder why. And here is why they say that there's a degree of innovation, there's a degree of creativity, and a degree of energy and intensity that comes with the energy of young people. Now, this is absolutely no disrespect to older people. I believe very strongly that the wisdom of the old and the energy of the young must work hand in hand. So there is no backstage call for older people. But I think that the time has come for the church, especially the Redeemed Christian Church of God, to become extremely deliberate in selecting and positioning new leaders. And here is what I believe we should start doing. I've had the opportunity to study churches that have had to grow beyond the early founders. And here are the 3 things that they generally did. One was setting up platforms and platforms like academies for leadership to deliberately search out and discover new type of leaders that appeal to the mission and the direction of the church. So they set up the platform. The second thing that they do is to deliberately groom and train the leaders. And the third thing that they do is to deliberately place them. So there is a selection, there's a grooming, and there's a placement. And I think that might be currently maybe missing in our pedagogy in RCCG at the moment. I love the campus example that we've given, and we must go back to perfecting the campus approach that we've had. I came out of a campus sort of setting, not necessarily in Nigeria, but outside of Nigeria. So I studied in the UK. So I was part of a campus fellowship of another church, even though I left RCCG in Nigeria, but I couldn't find RCCG in the university that I went to. So I actually started a campus fellowship for that particular church that is now in 32 different universities in the UK. I wish I had started it for RCCG if there was an RCCG church in that place. Now, those campus fellowships now are becoming the leadership feeders for the entire expansion of that particular church. I don't want to mention the name of the church. Now, coming back to Nigeria, I didn't see that structure being replicated where leaders are deliberately emerging from the campuses and going into a training process that then prepare them for placement.
Thank you, excellent and insightful comments and contributions. Before I go to Pastor Shola Oludoyi, I will like to take a pastor's seat perspective to this, and then I'll come to you, then yield to Pastor Bumi Ajaguna and bring in two young adults and another senior pastor to weigh in this conversation. I want to have Pastor Leke Adeboye speak to this. The question is, when Daddy Gio joined RCCG in 1973, the average age was about 50 by our estimate, maybe a little bit more. And then in 75 became full pastor just 2 years after. 1981 became the general overseer at the age of 39. And then the average age, of pastors, even members of RCCG, crashed to anywhere around 35, no more than 39 as an average, maybe even less at that time. Now we are back full cycle. In most places, the average age of pastors and leaders the church are back at 50, perhaps more than that in some places. What must we do to bring those, averages down, talking about those, in leadership, taking decisions, for the church? That is the question. Pastor Leke, Pastor Dari, I'm sorry, Pastor Dari Adeboye, please just go ahead and take the question.
Right. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I want to start with one word, and that word also shares the same letter as RCCG, redeem, and that word is relevance. What is happening, sir, I believe, I'm sure every one of us will realize, is that nobody wants to lose relevance. So as a result of that, when you have this generational gap between the old and the young, you have what you now, because the older generation doesn't want to lose relevance, you now have young adults and youths in your church, close to you, that are underutilized. And when they're underutilized and they're not fulfilling their potential, frustration, etc., you are going to experience a mass exodus. That's number one. Number two is that you have overutilization. This time around, it's not even underutilization. You have overutilization, but underappreciation. You want to do anything, you make use of the young adults and youth in the church to carry chairs, to clean the hall, to set up speakers, but then whenever it comes to their own affairs, no appreciation whatsoever. And so there will be that generational gap that, okay, when you need me, you use me and abuse me, and after you have finished using me, you dump me. So that is a second one. The third aspect of it is that you will now have what's called victimization. When the young adults and youth see what is good for the church and they're coming up with ideas and they're making suggestions and they're taking initiatives, then the pastor now comes down hard on them that in our day, in our generation, this is not how we do it. This is how we've always done it for years, etc. So victimization now kills the spirit completely. And that gap and that chasm continues to grow and grow and grow. So all of these things will continue to lead to this issue if they are not addressed.
Thank you very much. Now, Pastor Shola Oludoyi, you want to speak I would say, from a senior pastor's perspective, around this subject? What do you think? Is it just to leave things as is there something we must do? Now, the question I wanted to ask you earlier on was if you are invited to the governing council meeting on Monday, and then so you attended the symposium, and a question was posted that we have average age of RCCG at 55 now. What will you recommend to us in 1 minute? What must we do as a governing council? What will you say to them?
Very simple. The reality is that forgive me, that data we have in us is not far-fetched from what we have around the world. Barna Research Group in the 1990s found that the average age of pastor worldwide about 1991 was 44 years old. As of today, it has shifted 25 years later to about 54 years old worldwide. So it's not too bad. 1 in 7 pastors worldwide is under 40 years old. So it's not too bad. So let's calm down. But what we need to be embracing though is there must be conversation. Pastor Dari alluded to the fact that some pastors are insecure because their relevance seemingly is being threatened. But there must be conversations. Trainings must be intentionally done to let people know that the debating must be passed to someone else. Now, what then do we do next? Let us devise another curriculum or assignment for those who may be in senior positions so that they know that there is always something to do. So it's like the eagle, isn't it? The eagle gets to a point, yes, I'm trying to get, it's like the eagle, isn't it? The eagle, if you want to marry the eagle, the one will throw something, a twig down, and the man must go pick it up, the male eagle. So it's something like that. Let's reinvent ourselves so that the senior ones can move up while what they're living on can be occupied by the generation. So there should not be conflict of interest. We can have a multi-generational church where everybody is relevantly functioning and functioning well. But it takes conversation, it takes orientation, it takes teaching, it takes understanding. For instance, I started pastoring in my 20s. I wasn't a member in Nigeria. I only joined RCCG United Kingdom. But I moved through all the ranks. Okay, I pastored in my 20s, basically. And I remember I had people that were way older than me in church. And when you want to do, they say, well, you are too young. You don't understand. So, and that's part of life. Now I'm getting there. Now you say I'm still young. So when will I get there? So those are things. So a conversation web, I think this sort of thing we're doing will really help, where we can teach the elderly ones or some of us that, look, guys, you are not irrelevant. If you groom somebody else and you help them become, you've actually done well. Okay.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Now, Pastor Bume Ajagun, I will yield to you. You want to take this conversation to the next level and invite other members of the panel, panelists to weigh into this.
Yes, thank you very much, Pastor Sholaoludoyi, for that. Hearing you, it's all about selection, grooming, and training, ensuring that there's mentorship. And just to allude to what Pastor Adeboye had mentioned, you can't continue to use, but not appreciate and let them understand that they're actually the future leaders of tomorrow. With that said, I would like to hear the young adult pastor's perspective, and I'll call on Pastor Michael Ayer from the UK.
Good evening, Mark. Thank you again. Please kindly specify the specific question you want me to answer so I can do due diligence in regards to the gap and the generation.
Okay, basically what Pastor Badru has mentioned is that the average age of pastors was about 50 years old when our Daddy Gio joined the church. And shortly after he became the Gio, the average dropped drastically to a range of 35 to 40 years old. But today, what we see is that the average age is back to 55, 60 years old. So the question basically is, how do we get back to becoming a more youth vibrant church where we see the youth being the leaders and doing, strategic things with pushing the parishes and the provinces forward?
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you for clarifying that. I think the issue a lot of younger people are seeing is probably issues they have with leadership. So if they're in a church, maybe because their parents are there and they don't necessarily like the way church is done in that church, they are not likely to want to follow that model. Earlier you said that the age was similar to Daddy Gio's age because I'm sure they looked up to him for, oh, he's like me, I want to lead, so etc. But I think when younger people might not necessarily like how leadership is being ran, they're likely not to emulate. This isn't about Redeem, by the way, just in general. So I think the best way for us to include or to have a younger age or demographic going into leadership will be probably giving them the freedom to run church how their demographic run it. I think, for example, in regards to services, music, the length, the format of the church, if you're able to have a model that relates to the age of a 35-year-old per se specifically, you're more likely to see people of that age have a more interest in leadership and running churches.
Thank you very much for that response, very intuitive. I would also like on this note to hear from one senior pastor as well, Pastor Fumi Obilano, on your perspective as to how we could make the church more youth vibrant. Pastor Obilano, over to you. You're muted, ma'am.
I want to thank Pastor Dari. He hit on those 3 points: underutilization, overutilization, and victimization. That's, he hits the points on the head. I want to say that one of the ways we can get our youth to be more involved is to actually let's see their face. Let's see their face when we have services, when we have trainings, when we have programs. Let them be the facilitators. Let them be the trainers. Many of them are training in their companies. They are in Fortune 500 companies. They are doing wonderful work wherever it is that they're working. So let's feature them, because what happens is that if they are going to be on, they are going to tell their peers, hey, I'm doing a training for the pastors in Redeemed. I'm going to be preaching today's sermon in church. I'm the one handling Sunday school today at the convention. I'm the one who is going to be giving a talk on whatever, on relationships. Let's give them the podium. Let's give them the platform, because they will invite their peers in to come and watch them. And they will hear the kind of message that is relevant to them. Believe me, I don't know, one day I was preaching in church, and I usually don't do this, but I don't know how I mentioned spirit husband. They freaked out. I mean, when it dropped out of my mouth, I knew I had blown it. Because the demons that they are chasing is different from, we are looking for witches and wizards. They don't know anything about that. Thank God because as parents, we have prayed that for them, and so we want to be able to feature them, because once they have the platforms, and I thank God for what is happening in Nigeria, because you tune into Holy Ghost service or any other program, you see these young people there. They are preaching, they are handling the announcements. That is wonderful. That is a model we all need to follow in all of our continents and all of our churches. And that's why youth churches in Nigeria are doing well. When we begin to do this in other continents, in other nations, I'm sure we will see the kind of results they are seeing in Nigeria. Let's give them the platform. They will miss it sometimes, but it's okay. We missed it too, but we are still here today. So let's allow them to make that mistake, but let's give them that platform and let them express themselves, and they will do a wonderful job.
Thank you very much, Ma. And I cannot leave this question without posing this same question to Pastor Fikayo Oluwayemi. And after Pastor Fikayo actually answers this, 2 minutes, Pastor Fikayo, I would like to pose it as well to a young adult pastor who's not yet up to 30 years old to give his experience, Pastor Daniel Olawande, on your intake on this. So next, I'll request that Pastor Fikayo gives his response on this.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify precisely what the question is.
Okay, I'll take it again. The average age of pastors was about 50 years old. And the basic question is, how do we get back to becoming that youth vibrant church?
Got it. Thank you. So one of the things I would say is, so this is a question that has many answers, and obviously we're not going to arrive at all of them in one sitting. But I would say right away, and this is one of the reasons why I advise against youth or young adult churches, and let me clarify what that means. I mean young adult churches that are exclusively young adult churches, not young adult churches within a larger congregation, but young adult churches that are exclusively young adult churches. One of the reasons why I would say I advise against that, exclusively doing that thing and saying that's what we're going to do moving forward, even though there are good examples of that, is that when you are in a larger congregation and as a leader or as a leading pastor or as a senior pastor, you choose to target youth and young adults for discipleship and leadership trainings, so that within your large congregation, you are beginning to bring out these younger people and putting them in just, integrating them in your discipleship protocol and your leadership protocol. So for example, say you have Believers Academy or Believers Class, or you have Sunday school, or you have Bible study groups, or you have various leadership areas. Having trained or mentored some of these young people, placing them there so that they're perpetually leading in front of everyone, so everyone can see them exercising their leadership, that would really help to change that dynamic. Another thing is, we've talked about the campus situation with regards to starting campus fellowships. That will help also build leaders from their youth, from their teens into their their 20s, early 20s, etc., etc. Another thing I would say is just having recurrent cultural adaptation trainings for leaders in the house, the people who are generations away. So as we are right now as a church, we have about 4 or 5 generations within the church. We have baby boomers, we have the Generation X, we have millennials, we have the Generation Z, and then we have the Alpha. And according to research, it's been shown or it's been proven that millennials and lower, millennials, the Gen Z, and the Alpha generation are attending church 11% less than the baby boomers and the Generation X. And one of the reasons why that is again, the shift in culture. There's just been a tremendous shift in culture, and training your leaders, the people who are at the forefront, the older pastors or the older leaders, to be more adaptable to the culture or the climate that you're trying to reach, will really help attract the youth and the young adults to aspire to be more like them, aspire to leadership. That's just a few things that I think we could employ to help guide.
Thank you so much, Pastor Fikayo. And we'll be going to the next question, but I just want to give Pastor Daniel Olawande just 1 minute a chance to respond to this question. Please go ahead, Pastor Daniel.
Yeah, thank you very much for this diversity in church. As a young adult and youth pastor that is not up to 30, I think that I was given opportunity at a very earlier age, and I've seen many young people come into ministry because of me, because they've seen that it's possible to start pastoring and have some tremendous dimensions of results and mentorship. And some other young guys too are now in ministry because of this gesture. I think the church should continue that kind of gesture. I was discovered on campus, so the campus system works in Nigeria. I was discovered from campus, and from campus I entered into the Corpus Fellowship, that's the RCCF, and from there I came to the church. So there was a proper transition for me from the campus fellowship to the Corpus Fellowship to the church, to the young adult and youth church. And also about the inclusion, I think that we, like the other question about having churches that probably not having young adult and youth churches, I think that we should have that kind of church, the young adult and youth church. I also think we should have the teenagers church now, because the Generation Z are not, their attention span is not the same one as the millennials. So as the generation is going, there's a decline in the fellowship, in their religious orientation. So I feel that we need different kind of expression of churches, but at the same time, we need a youthful church. A youthful church is not about the age, it's about the mind. It's a function of the mind. So we need a youthful church. We need a vibrant church so the church can be youthful and not be a youth church. It doesn't have to be a youth church for it to be youthful. Youthfulness is a function of the mind. So when the pastor and the people in the church are youthful in their mind, they're going to have a youthful and a lively church. Then we still need the young adult and youth church that's reaching out to a particular generation. We need the Generation Z church, that's the teenagers church now, that's reaching out because they understand their language. They want to see their fellow teenagers speak to them. Why we still need mentorship? We need all-encompassing kind of ministry, but all these different kind of expressions should be given so that everybody, every generation, we have their expression inside main church system, and everybody will have an expression. So with this, then the campus system, the corpus system, if this is replicated across board in every nation of the world, we'll have the same tremendous result that we are seeing in Nigeria based on this opportunity that's given to us. I think with this, that we'll be able to have inclusion at the same time diversity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for these responses. This has been very educative and intuitive and inspiring. I would now like to hand it over to my co-anchor, Pastor Tunde Badru, for his last questions. Pastor Tunde Badru, over to you, sir.
Excellent comments. We are now, getting ready to wrap things up. From here we are trying to stay, within time. But Pastor Dare Adeboye, I think, had posted an opposing view on something that was said, I think, from Pastor Vicario, and that's acceptable here. But can we hear your perspective to what that is?
Okay, thank you, sir. Maybe I'm biased because I'm a PICP of a youth church or, involved the youth provinces, but I strongly believe that it is essential for us to have a young adult and youth church, not just as part of a main church. Now, what the strategy ought to be is that we need to build a proper feeder system from the kindergarten church to the children's church, to the teenagers church, to the young adult and youth church, then to the young professionals church, then to the adult church, then to the elders church. That's what I strongly believe we ought to have, so that there is a form of graduation. It should be a curriculum that is standard in RCCG all over the world. What we have started in Youth Province 5, for example, is that every year we graduate classes. From the children's church, now you reach a certain age, you graduate to the teenage church. When you reach 19, you graduate to the young adult and youth church, etc. Even though we are a young adult and youth church. And any month where there are 5 Sundays, we make sure that that 5th Sunday is anchored either by the teenage church or by the children's church. Every month, in alternative months where there are 5 months, the 3rd Sunday of that month, even though I'm in the church, I go to the teenage church, I spend the entire service with them, we teach them, they pose questions, etc. This is essential to have this feeder system. Otherwise, we will never bridge this gap. We will never bridge this gap. And the reason why I keep saying that it is essential for these youth churches and the youth churches and the youth provinces, etc., to exist, is that when Jacob was returning from his land of sojourn and he saw Esau, he said, I left with 1 star, but I am returning as 2 companies. There are certain things you cannot achieve if you don't leave home to go to university. Because by the time you leave home and you return from university, you come back with a different mindset. Why? It was essential for you to have that experience. The youth churches, I believe, were created, the youth provinces were created so that you leave the adult church where you have sat, where you have been sitting, where it's the same old thing. You experience a different type of energy, catch fresh fire. By the time you return, because you're not going to be youth forever. At some point in time, you are going to become an elder. You are going to become what they call excellent men or whatever it is. You will return back to this excellent men.
Okay, that's wasn't right there. Okay, well, I mean, excellent. Believe
to all these things. So that is my submission, sir.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you so very much. This has been very, very fulfilling, very interesting. Now, as we wrap things up, we'll take just 1 minute wrap up from 5 different people. If there is one message that you have for the church, and I would begin with the young adult, what would that message be? Not just to the church, but to the older generation. And when I come to the older generation, I'll be saying, what message do you have for the church and the young generation to foster this integration? I will begin with Pastor Oyinaya to, just for 30 seconds, one vital, on a final note kind of comment, message for the church and the older generation, since you represent the younger generation.
Thank you very much. I believe very strongly that if our gospel is going to truly reach the ends of the earth, if what we're going to do, which was responding to Jesus's charge that go ye into the world and preach the gospel, discipling all, but he didn't tell us how. COVID-19 and the crisis of 2020 has now presented an opportunity for us to not even begin to have a conversation about what model of church we should have in the old ways of having them, the brick and mortar type of churches, but now how we engage with a large audience of people in a borderless way. We need to urgently begin to raise online pastors. We need to begin to set up online churches and begin to ordain, if need be, online ministers who are able to not just stand on the pulpit physically, but get into people's DMs and begin to reach out to them where they are globally and have a borderless expression. I believe that that's actually the one takeout that we must get out of this symposium, which was where we started from earlier on. I like the conversation that is going on around whether there's a need for young adult church or not, but I actually strongly believe that the future, we can run away from it, we can postpone it, but Moses is dead. Joshua must emerge now. The battle has changed. We must change our strategy for us to remain relevant and for us to win many to Christ and disciple them. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Excellent contribution. Pastor Bajo Akisanya from the UK, 30 seconds on a final note to comment.
All right. My final note is actually very simple. For both the church we serve, whatever generation, there must be one fundamental discovery. The discovery is found in Genesis 1, verse 28. You must identify what God has put you on the planet for. In that place, you will do the following. The Bible says that you will be fruitful. That means you will reproduce yourself so that others may benefit. The Bible also says that you will multiply. You will cause others to become fruitful in and of themselves. Key element. The last 2 things are there. You will replenish what is missing. And then you will confront whatever challenge is necessary that will cause your church and world to grow, so that at the end of the day, irrespective of the age you are, God will be glorified, because through you, he will speak to your generation, your circumstances, and your situations. That's my submission.
Thank you very much. Excellent.
To stay with the original.
Thank you. Then I will go to 2 senior pastors. Definitely Pastor Fumio Bikoyo will have 1 minute on a final note comment, and then Pastor Shola Oludeyi, before I then invite the AGO youth and young adults to just give us final admonition also in about a minute so we can stay on time. Pastor Fumi, you want to go first, and then Pastor Oludeyi?
That's okay. I want to say that it's you cannot teach an old dog new tricks. And it's difficult to pour new wine in old wineskin. So we have to totally reinvent how we do things. On a policy perspective, I want us to look at our ordination system. It is tying up the hands of pastors to move us forward in terms of getting younger, new people on board, because our ordination system seems to be a system of reward for service. Ordination should be empowerment for your calling, not a reward for service. So I think that's something that we need to look at. And to our younger people, I want to say to us, we may have made mistakes as older people, but the way we knew best to, we reached our generation. And the young people need to step up to the plate, and you need to reach your generation. We can't reach your generation. We can guide because the Bible principles don't change. However, the methodology, the technology, the systems, the structures, you would have to help put in place because you will have to reach your own generation, and God is going to hold every one of us accountable for the piece of the work that he gave to each of us. And I want to say thank you to RLI. You put together a wonderful symposium. Thank you for all you do. May God bless you.
Thank you very much, Ma. Pastor Shala.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Pastor Tunde and the team and the RLI. We're truly grateful. A few things. Number one is I feel that we need to have a look at the hierarchical structure of the church. To a large extent, we might need to think out it a bit, not in a negative way, but just something we need to look at in the future conversations. I think it will help us. The drive for position is too much within the system. People are positional conscious, but I'm always emphasizing, I feel that rather let me do the work. The work should speak for itself. Let the evidence be from your assignment. And then position should become de-emphasized in the system. That's what I think. And then Pastor Fumi Asisi said it again. I just believe that the scramble for ordination should be totally, let's even suspend ordination for 3 years. Come on, let's just do the work. I feel that these are conventions that will be uncomfortable, but we need to have them. And then finally, if I may say, it appears that the fivefold ministry is not easily pronounced within our organization due to nobody's fault, absolutely, but I think it's something we need to look at as we go forward. Now, somebody said Daddy was certain age and they were certain age. The reality is you attract your type, but if you have the right type, that's why Daddy Joe can minister to everybody because of his personality. So I feel that we need to look at that a little bit. May God bless us in Jesus' name. There's no middle line in our system at all. And certain kind of people will not enjoy. It's just too patriarchal as far as I'm concerned. Let's rejig the system a little bit and the structure. Go help us.
Amen. Thank you very much, sir. Well, before I call the AGO, I just got a message that came in that the National Youth Pastor is on the platform, and we will want to give him a minute to make a comment before I then welcome the AGO. Pastor Laulu sent that message. So the National Youth Pastor, I'm not too sure I have a name to that. But please, if you're there, you are welcome to give on a final note comment before we then have the AGO final comment.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, sir.
My name is Precious. Akinbade is my father's name. I've listened to all the conversation from the beginning. And what I would like to say is that I have a compilation of my answers to every question that has been questioned during this symposium. And I'm going to forward it directly to you.
Thank you, sir.
But on the final note from my end, sir, as some of us are also gravitating to become old, we should also not repeat the mistakes that the elders are doing concerning the young people. We should discover these young people, develop them through mentorship and discipleship, deploy them by giving them platforms. Even where we are as leaders, are we also allowing them? The Lord will bless his church. Amen. Thank you for your fantastic program, and God bless everybody.
Thank you so very much for that offer. We'll be looking forward to sending us those documentation, those answers, to the questions, because part of the objective of this symposium is to come out with a communique, some report that will be escalating to the leadership so that they could begin to look at these things. It's possible that we've missed out one or two of our panelists. It's because we want to stay to time, so we do not exceed it. Actually, we're about 3 minutes, off the closing time, but we'll wrap things up now. So if you are there and we didn't get a chance to call you, I'm sure the part 2 of this symposium that will happen by God's grace, very soon, we will have you back, and then you can share with us your thoughts. On that note, I will want to welcome the Assistant General Overseer Youth, Pastor Peter Mekena, to give us a final note, comments, and then pray for us, pray for the church. You're welcome, sir.
Yeah, God bless you, sir. I really want to thank the Leadership Institute for this wonderful platform, for all the discussions, and for all the participants. I want to really thank you. And it's obvious to me that we have a great future, and we should please put these things together and make sure that they get to the appropriate quarter. But let me still say this, that we all need to be doing our own in our little spheres, in our own areas of operation. What I have found in the Redeemed Christian Church of God is that the problem is not really with the authority. The problem is more with the line leaders. I can tell you that I have I grew from being a state pastor to becoming special assistant, and then I'm an assistant general overseer now. I've seen that most of the problems we have emanate from the line leaders. Maybe in other, when we have other discussions, I may be able to expatiate. But let's be doing our best to be catching the young ones, mentoring them, encouraging them, giving them platforms to operate. Our biological children and spiritual children, let's be giving them opportunities. And let's be training people now to pastor online. Like somebody said, the church has moved. We will still be having churches in physical structures, but let's be training people more in the area of online pastoring. Let's keep reviewing our policies, and I can tell you that the governing council is ready and willing to keep looking at our policies. Like I kept saying, the challenge we have is that even when we come out with what we have reviewed, we still have a few people who want to do things the way they like. But I believe we have a bright future. I believe that the fact that we're having this discussion now are very clear. We have a very grateful. And I want to thank God for those who put this together. The Lord will continue to use you. And I pray that all of us will remain relevant in the scheme of things. I pray that God will help us to encourage the youth to find their callings and to be operating in the area of their callings, and that we ourselves will be fulfilling our callings in our area of operations in the name of Jesus. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we sign out, I want to appreciate our Father in the Lord, the General Overseer, Daddy Gio, Pastor Adeboye, for allowing us to do this. We truly appreciate you, sir. And to our mommy, our mother in Israel, Mommy Folu Adeboye, we are so, so grateful for your fatherly love and care and leadership that you have shown, not just to members of RCCG, but to the body of Christ as a whole, all over the world. We truly, truly appreciate you. And to the chairman, RCCG North American Operations, under which the RLI functions, is the visionary of RLI, is the one that God used to set up RLI. We thank you so very much for allowing this to happen. Thank you so, so very much. And to my co-moderator, the younger pastor of the two moderators, Pastor Olubemi Ajagunna, thank you so very much for such a wonderful, wonderful job. God bless you. We appreciate you. On that note, we're going to sign off. Thank you very much, and we come your way soon again. God bless you, and you stay rapturable. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again.